Unit 28, the Mary Celeste. Part 1. The Mary Celeste was built in 1861 in Nova Scotia, Canada, as a cargo-carrying sailing ship. When it was launched, it was given the name the Amazon. It was not a lucky ship. The first captain died a few days after it was registered, and on its first voyage in 1862, it was badly damaged in a collision. While it was being repaired in port, it caught fire. In 1863, it crossed the Atlantic for the first time, and in the English Channel, it collided with another ship, which sank. The Amazon was badly damaged itself. 4 years later, in 1867, it ran aground on Cape Breton Island off the Canadian coast. The ship was almost completely wrecked and had to be rebuilt. It was then sold, and the name was changed to the Mary Celeste. Sailors are very superstitious and dislike sailing on ships which have been unlucky or which have changed their names. Many sailors refuse to sail on the Mary Celeste. On November the 5th, 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York carrying a cargo of commercial alcohol to Genoa in Italy. There were 11 people on board: Captain Briggs, his wife and 2-year-old daughter, and a crew of 8. Briggs was an experienced captain and a very religious man. In his cabin there was a harmonium which was used for playing hymns. A month later, the Mary Celeste was seen by another ship, the Dei Grazia, about halfway between the Azores and the Portuguese coast. Captain Morehouse of the Dei Grazia, a friend of Captain Briggs, noticed that the ship was sailing strangely. When the Mary Celeste did not answer his signal, he decided to investigate. He sent a small boat to find out what was wrong. The Mary Celeste was completely deserted. The only lifeboat was missing. All the sails were up and in good condition. All the cargo was there. The ship had obviously been through storms. The glass on the compass was broken. The windows of the deck cabins had been covered with wooden planks. There was a meter of water in the cargo hold, which was not enough to be dangerous. The water pumps were working perfectly. There was enough food for 6 months and plenty of fresh water. All the crew's personal possessions, clothes, boots, pipes, and tobacco, etc., were on board. There were toys on the captain's bed. There was food and drink on the cabin table. Only the navigation instruments and ship's papers were missing. The last entry in the ship's logbook had been made 11 days earlier, 1,000 kilometers west, but the ship had continued in a straight line. The forehatch was found open. There were 2 deep marks on the bows near the waterline. There was a deep cut on the ship's rail made by an axe. There were old brown blood stains on the deck and on the captain's sword, which was in the cabin. Captain Morehouse put some sailors on the Mary Celeste, who sailed it to Portugal. There was a long official investigation, but the story of what had happened on the ship and what had happened to the crew still remains a mystery. Captain Morehouse and his crew were given the salvage money for bringing the ship to port. Many explanations have been suggested, but none of them have ever been proved. Unit 29, the Mary Celeste, Part 2.
I don't know what happened, but it must have happened suddenly.
Why do you think that?
Think about it. There were toys on the captain's bed, weren't there? The child must have been playing, and they must have interrupted her suddenly.
Yes, that's true. And the food was on the table. They must have been eating, or getting ready to eat.
I'll tell you my theory. The lifeboat was missing, right? They could have been practicing their emergency drill. They must have got into the boat and launched it.
All right. But what happened to the boat?
Ah, they may have been rowing the lifeboat round the ship, and there must have been a gust of wind. Then the ship could have moved forward and run down the lifeboat. That explains the marks on the bows.
Come on. They can't all have been sitting in the lifeboat. What about the captain? He should have been steering the ship.
Ah, he might have been watching the drill and jumped in to save the others.
Unit 31. Apologies.
Hello. Derek Moore speaking.
Oh, hello, Derek. This is Clive.
Ah, yes. Did you get home all right?
Yes, thanks. But I just wanted to apologize for last night.
Don't worry about it. It really doesn't matter.
But the carpet, it must be ruined. It was so silly of me to put the cup on the floor.
Forget it, Clive. It's all right now.
But it must have made an awful stain.
Look, it's nothing. I was annoyed last night, but it doesn't look so bad this morning.
Anyway, you must let me pay for the cleaning.
Listen, Clive, accidents happen. They always do at parties. I don't want to hear any more about it, right?
All right. I really am very sorry.
See you on Monday. Bye.
Excuse me,
Yes?
would you mind putting out your cigarette?
I beg your pardon?
This is a no-smoking compartment.
Is it? I didn't see a sign.
There it is, on the window.
Oh, yes. I'm terribly sorry.
Oh, good morning, Mrs. Newbury.
Good afternoon, Sharon. Late again?
Oh, yes, I'm ever so sorry. I couldn't find a parking place.
Perhaps you should have left home earlier.
Yes, I know. It won't happen again.
It had better not, Sharon. This is the third time this week.
Oi, you.
Me?
Yes, you. What do you think you're doing?
Pardon? I'm just waiting for the bus.
Well, there's a queue, you know.
Is there? Sorry, I didn't mean to push in. I didn't realize there was a queue.
Are you okay?
Yes, I'm all right, but what about my car?
There's not too much damage.
What? Just look at it. I only bought it last week. You shouldn't have been going so fast.
Well, I'm sorry, but it wasn't my fault.
Wasn't your fault? What do you mean? I had right of way.
I'm afraid you didn't. You shouldn't have come out like that.
Why not? There's no sign.
What's that there, then?
Oh, yes. A stop sign. I must have missed it.
Well, you should be more careful. You could have killed us all.
Yes. I'm sorry. What more can I say?
All right, all right. At least nobody's hurt. Here come the police. You better explain it to them.
Unit 32. They didn't stop to tell me. Inspector Waterman is interviewing Stan Fletcher, the driver of the hijacked truck.
Sit down, Mr. Fletcher. Cigarette?
No, thanks. I'm trying to stop smoking.
Now, Mr. Fletcher, how did you manage to lose your truck?
You know the story already.
Well, tell us again.
Okay. I was driving down the M6 from Scotland, carrying whiskey in cases.
Mm-hmm.
I decided to stop at Burnham Wood.
Why Burnham Wood?
I stopped to get some diesel, and I needed a coffee. I've been driving for 3 hours.
Go on.
After I'd filled the tank, I parked outside the cafe.
Yes.
I got my coffee and sat by the window to keep an eye on the truck.
Did you see anybody near the lorry?
No, nobody. Then I went to make a phone call.
A phone call?
Yes, you can check. I stopped to get some change at the cash desk.
Okay. Then?
Well, I was talking to my wife on the phone when I saw the lorry going past the window. I couldn't believe my eyes. I dropped the phone and ran outside, but it was too late.
Had you remembered to lock the cab door?
Yes, I always remember to lock it. I'm not stupid, you know.
All right, all right. But can you actually remember locking it on this occasion?
Yes, definitely.
How can you be so sure?
Well, I remember putting the key in the lock. It was all wet and dirty. It was raining, you see, and I dropped it in a puddle.
And the passenger door? Did you remember to check that?
I don't actually remember checking it, but I'm sure I must have done. It locks from the inside, and I never use that door.
But you don't remember checking it?
No, not really. But you can't remember everything, can you? I might have forgotten to check it.
So it could have been open?
Yes. Yes, it could have been, but I bet it wasn't.
Well, what's your theory, Mr. Fletcher?
They must have had keys, mustn't they? They started the engine, didn't they?
How did they get the keys?
Don't ask me. I've got no idea. They didn't stop to tell me.
Unit 34. Kidnapped. Hugh Rowland is a wealthy businessman. His wife phoned him an hour ago to tell him that their daughter hadn't returned home from school. He told her not to worry and came home at once. He's just arrived to find his wife in tears.
Pamela, what's wrong? Is it Caroline?
Yes. This note came through the door. She's been kidnapped.
Kidnapped? Oh, my God, no. Have you phoned the police?
No, don't touch the phone. Read the note first.
£500,000. It'll take me a few days to get that much cash together.
How long?
I don't know. I just can't put my hands on that much money. Not immediately. Maybe we should phone the police.
No, not the police. If the kidnappers find out, they'll kill her.
But I'll have to borrow the money. If I don't tell the police, the bank won't let me have it.
Oh, Hugh, unless we do exactly what they say, we may never see her again.
Hugh Rowland?
Did you get our note?
Yes.
Have you told the police?
No, not yet.
You'd better not. When can you get the money?
I need a few days.
You've got 1 day.
How do we know that Caroline is still alive?
You don't. You'll have to trust us. Get the money by tomorrow evening. You'll hear from us again.
If you harm a hair on her head, I'll... Unit 35. Have you seen this advert?
Wendy, have you seen this advert?
It looks great, doesn't it? I phoned them an hour ago. They'll ring me back if they want me.
Oh, they'll want you. I mean, you've got beautiful long hair.
I hope so. If I go, I'll get a new hairstyle. And a day out in London.
Hey, Andrew, look at this ad.
It looks fun. Why don't you ring?
I'd love to, but it's a waste of time. My hair's far too short.
Well, I like it the way it is. Anyway, you don't know what they might do. Blue and green hair's fashionable at the moment.
Oh, Andrew, I wouldn't mind that. If I had longer hair, I'd phone them.
Colin, take a look at this.
Oh, yes, I've seen it. I'm going to phone tomorrow.
It sounds very exciting. And you've got a decent car.
There are some disadvantages.
Every job's got disadvantages. But you're always complaining about your present job.
I know. I'm prepared to try it. But we haven't got a phone. I won't take it if they don't pay the phone bills.
Sandra, did you see this?
Yes. You aren't interested, are you?
What, me? I wasn't born yesterday. There are far too many things wrong with it.
What do you mean?
I wouldn't take a job like that. You wouldn't have any security. You wouldn't earn anything if you didn't work all day, every day. And I wouldn't take a sales job if they didn't provide a car.
Yes. Look at the address. It's a hotel room. Certainly wouldn't work for a company if they didn't even have an office.
Helen, what do you think of this advertisement?
Well, didn't I tell you? It was in last week's paper, too. I applied. I've got an interview tomorrow.
Do you think you'll get it?
They seemed very keen on the phone. I think they'll offer me the job.
So, you're going to California?
I didn't say that. I won't take the job unless they agree to pay my return fare. It'll be hard work with 5 kids, and I won't go unless they offer me a good salary.
There's a job in America in the paper.
Yes, I know. I wouldn't dream of applying for it.
Why not? You've been looking for a job in the States.
It's slave labor, isn't it? 5 kids and 1 evening off a week.
But the money might be very good.
I wouldn't take it unless they paid me a really good salary, with longer holidays and more free time. And I certainly wouldn't go anywhere abroad unless they paid my return fare.
Unit 36. Energy crisis.
Good evening and welcome again to the Michael Parker's Totems. In tonight's program, we're looking at the problem of energy. The world's energy resources are limited. Nobody knows exactly how much fuel is left, but pessimistic forecasts say that there is only enough coal for 450 years, enough natural gas for 50 years, and that oil might run out in 30 years. Obviously, we have to do something, and we have to do it soon. I'd like to welcome our first guest, Professor Marvin Burnham of the New England Institute of Technology. Professor Burnham.
Well, we are in an energy crisis, and we will have to do something quickly. Fossil fuels, coal, oil, and gas are rapidly running out. The tragedy is that fossil fuels are far too valuable to waste on the production of electricity. Just think of all the things you can make from oil. If we don't start conserving these things now, it will be too late. And nuclear power is the only real alternative. We are getting some electricity from nuclear power stations already. If we invest in further research now, we'll be ready to face the future. There's been a lot of protests lately against nuclear power. Some people will protest at anything. But nuclear power stations are not as dangerous as some people say. It's far more dangerous to work down a coal mine or on a North Sea oil rig. Safety regulations and power stations are very strict. If we spent money on research now, we could develop stations which create their own fuel and burn their own waste. In many parts of the world where there are no fossil fuels, nuclear power is the only alternative. If you accept that we need electricity, then we will need nuclear energy. Just imagine what the world would be like if we didn't have electricity. No heating, no lighting, no transport, no radio or TV. Just think about the ways you use electricity every day. Surely we don't want to go back to the Stone Age. That's what will happen if we turn our backs on nuclear research.
Thank you, Professor. Our next guest is a member of CANE, the Campaign Against Nuclear Energy, Jennifer Hughes.
Right. I must disagree totally with Professor Burnham. Let's look at the facts. First, there is no perfect machine. I mean, why do aeroplanes crash? Machines fail. People make mistakes. What would happen if there were a serious nuclear accident? And an accident must be inevitable, sooner or later. Huge areas would be evacuated, and they could remain contaminated with radioactivity for years. If it happened in your area, you wouldn't get a penny in compensation. No insurance company covers nuclear risks. There are accidents. If the nuclear industry didn't keep them quiet, there would be a public outcry. Radioactivity causes cancer and may affect future generations. Next, nuclear waste. There is no technology for absolutely safe disposal. Some of this waste will remain active for thousands of years. Is that what you want to leave to your children? And their children's children? A reactor only lasts about 25 years. By the year 2000, we'll have retired 26 reactors in the UK. Next, terrorism. Terrorists could hold the nation to ransom if they captured a reactor. In the USA, the Savannah River plant, and Professor Burnham knows this very well, lost, yes, lost, enough plutonium between 1955 and 1978 to make 18 atom bombs. Where is it? Who's got it? I consider that nuclear energy is expensive, dangerous, and evil. And most of all, absolutely unnecessary. But Dr. Woodstock will be saying more about that.
Thank you, Jennifer. Now, I'm very pleased to welcome Dr. Catherine Woodstock. She is the author of several books on alternative technology.
Hello. I'd like to begin by agreeing with Jennifer. We can develop alternative sources of power, and unless we try, we'll never succeed. Instead of burning fossil fuels, we should be concentrating on more economic uses of electricity, because electricity can be produced from any source of energy. If we didn't waste so much energy, our resources would last longer. You can save more energy by conservation than you can produce for the same money. Unless we do research on solar energy, wind power, wave power, tidal power, hydroelectric schemes, etc., our fossil fuels will run out and will all freeze or starve to death. Other countries are spending much more than us on research, and don't forget that energy from the sun, the waves, and the wind lasts forever. We really won't survive unless we start working on cleaner, safer sources of energy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Woodstock. And our final speaker, before we open the discussion to the studio audience, is Charles Wicks, MP and Minister for Energy.
I've been listening to the other speakers with great interest. By the way, I don't agree with some of the estimates of world energy reserves. More oil and gas is being discovered all the time. If we listen to the pessimists, and there are a lot of them about, none of us would sleep at night. In the short term, we must continue to rely on the fossil fuels, oil, coal, and gas. But we must also look to the future. Our policy must be flexible. Unless we thought new research was necessary, we wouldn't be spending money on it. After all, the government wouldn't have a Department of Energy unless they thought it was important. The big question is where to spend the money. On conservation of present resources or on research into new forms of power. But I'm fairly optimistic. I wouldn't be in this job unless I were an optimist.
Unit 37. What would you have done? Last week we invited readers to write and tell us about things that had happened to them, or things that they had heard about. We wanted stories where people just didn't know what to do next. Here are the stories that interested us most.
I was in a small country pub. I just sat down with a pint of beer. Suddenly this huge man, he looked like a boxer, came over, picked up my beer, drank it, banged the glass down on the table, stared straight at me, and then walked away without saying anything. I suppose I should have said something, but I was scared stiff. I didn't know what to do. What would you have done? Mr. A. Watney, Hull.
I was on a touring holiday of France. It was a very hot day, and I stopped at a small deserted beach. I hadn't got my swimming costume with me, but it was early in the morning, and there were no people or houses in sight. So I took off all my clothes and swam out to sea. I'm a very strong swimmer. I lay on my back, closed my eyes, and relaxed in the water. When I looked back at the beach, a coach had arrived, and there were 30 or 40 people sitting on the sand having a picnic. What would you have done? Mr. T. Horniman, Ipswich.
I was told a lovely story about the Bishop of Fleetwood. He'd gone to New York for a church conference. Anyway, when he stepped off the plane, there were a lot of journalists and cameramen. The first question one of the journalists asked was, "Do you intend to visit any nightclubs in New York?" Well, the bishop was 85 years old. "Are there any nightclubs in New York?" he asked innocently. The next morning, the headline in one of the New York papers was, "Bishop's first question on arrival in New York, are there any nightclubs?" How would you have felt? Reverend Simon Fisher, Exeter.
My story isn't at all funny. It was a very frightening experience. You see, one night I woke up suddenly. I heard the tinkle of broken glass from downstairs, and I thought I heard the window opening and the sound of two voices. My wife had woken up too. She told me to do something. A couple of days before, there'd been a report about a burglary in the local paper. The burglars had been interrupted, and they'd beaten up the householder. They'd nearly killed him. I was trembling with fear. I just didn't know what to do. In the end, I didn't go down, and they stole the silver tea service I'd inherited from my mother. Was I right? What would you have done? Mr. D. Boswell, Edinburgh.
I had parked my car in a multi-story car park, and I was taking a short cut through the side door of the restaurant in a large store. Halfway across the restaurant, I spotted my father eating pie, chips and peas. He often eats there. I crept up behind him, put my hand over his shoulder, took a chip off the plate, dipped it in the tomato sauce and ate it. Then I realized that the man was not my father. I was so embarrassed. I couldn't say a word. What would you have done? Miss H.P. Branston, Cardiff.
I just parked my car in the street near the football stadium in Liverpool. It was 10 minutes before the start of the match, and I was in a hurry. Two little boys came up to me and said, "Give us 50p, we look after your car while you're at the match." I told them to clear off, and one of them looked at me with big, round, innocent eyes and said, "Unless you give us the money, something might happen to your car while you're away. You know, a scratch or a flat tyre, something like that." I was furious. What would you have done? Mr. J. Hill, Birkenhead.
I couldn't believe a story I heard the other day. It seems that a couple had just bought a house in Manchester. They wanted to insulate the roof, so they climbed up into the loft. There, under the water tank, was £20,000 in cash. They handed over the money to the police. Would you have reported the find? What would you have done? Mrs. B. Leyland, Birmingham.
Unit 38. A bad day at the office.
What was wrong with you this morning?
Wrong with me? Sorry, Bob. I don't know what you mean.
You walked straight past me. You didn't say a word.
Really? Where?
It was just outside the newsagents in the High Street.
I'm terribly sorry, Bob. I just didn't see you.
Come on, Debbie. You must have done. I was waving.
No, honestly, I didn't see you. If I had seen you, I would have said hello.
Debbie, have you sent that telex to Geneva?
No, I haven't.
Why haven't you done it yet? It's urgent.
Because you didn't ask me to do it.
Didn't I?
No, you didn't. If you'd asked me, I'd have sent it.
Did you see a letter from Brazil on this desk?
Yes, it's here.
Oh, good. Where's the envelope?
I threw it away. Why?
It had some nice stamps on it. I wanted them for my son. He collects stamps.
Oh, Gordon, if only I'd known.
It doesn't matter.
No, I'd have kept it if I'd known. What's the matter, Jeff? You don't look very well.
No, I've had a terrible cold. I've been in bed all weekend, but it's better today.
I had a bad cold last week.
I know. You gave it to everyone in the office. I wouldn't have come to work if I'd had a cold like that.
Debbie,
Yes?
did you type this letter?
Yes, why? Is there something wrong with it?
Have a look. This should be £400. You've typed £40,000.
Oh, yes. I'm ever so sorry.
And you've also misspelt the customer's name. It should be Smelling, not Smelling. It's not funny, Debbie. If I hadn't noticed it, we could have lost the order.
Hi, Debbie. Did you have a good day today?
No, I didn't. I'm glad today's over. Everything went wrong.
Really?
Yes. I made a lot of typing errors, then I forgot to send a telex, and I offended Bob because I ignored him in the street.
Why was that?
It was that party last night. If I hadn't gone to bed late, it wouldn't have been such an awful day. I'm having an early night tonight.
Unit 39. A Saturday afternoon. Gillian felt slightly uneasy as the porter unlocked the gates and waved her through. St. Alfred's Hospital was not an ordinary mental institution. It was the most exclusive institution of its type in the country. You had to be not only mentally ill, but also extremely wealthy to be accepted as a patient. She parked her car outside the main entrance of the imposing 18th century building. She paused on the steps to look at the superb ornamental gardens and surrounding parkland. An old man in a white Panama hat was watering the flower bed beside the steps. He smiled at her.
Good afternoon, miss. A lovely day, isn't it?
Yes, it certainly is.
Are you a new patient?
Oh, I'm not a patient. I'm just here to do some research.
Will you be staying long?
I really don't know. I wonder if you could direct me to Dr. Carmichael's office.
Certainly, miss. Just go through the main door, turn left, walk down to the end of the corridor, and it's the last door on the right.
Thank you very much indeed.
Dr. Carmichael was waiting for her. He had been looking forward to meeting his new research assistant. He himself had always been interested in the special problems of long-stay patients. Dr. Carmichael was very proud of his hospital, and she was impressed by the relaxed and informal atmosphere. She spent the mornings interviewing patients and the afternoons writing up the results of her research in the gardens. Some of the patients were withdrawn and depressed. Some seemed almost normal. Only one or two had to be kept locked up. She found it hard to believe that all of them had been thought too dangerous to live in normal society. She often saw the old man in the Panama hat. He spent most of his time working in the gardens, but he always stopped to speak to her. She found out that his name was Maurice Featherstone. He was a gentle and mild-mannered old fellow, with clear blue, honest eyes, white hair, and a pinkish complexion. He always looked pleased with life. She became particularly curious about him, but Dr. Carmichael had never asked her to interview him, and she wondered why. One night at dinner, she asked about Mr. Featherstone.
Oh, yes, Morris. Nice old chap. He's been here longer than anybody.
What's wrong with him?
Nothing. His family put him here 35 years ago. They never come to visit him, but the bills are always paid on time.
But what had he done?
Oh, I'll show you his file. It seems that he burnt down his school when he was 17. His family tried to keep the incident quiet. Over the next few years, there were a number of mysterious fires in his neighborhood, but the family did nothing until he tried to set fire to the family mansion. He was in here the next day. Morris never protested.
And that was 35 years ago?
I'm afraid so. If I'd had my way, I'd have let him out years ago.
But he can't still be dangerous.
No. He's had plenty of opportunities. We even let him smoke. If he'd wanted to start a fire, he could have done it at any time.
Gillian was shocked by the story. She became determined to do something about it. She wrote letters to Morris's family, but never received a reply. He had never been officially certified as insane, and legally he could leave at any time. Dr. Carmichael was easily persuaded to let her talk to Morris.
Morris, have you ever thought about leaving this place?
No, miss. I'm very happy here. This is my home. And anyway, I've got nowhere to go.
But wouldn't you like to go into the village sometimes? To walk around? To buy your own tobacco?
I've never thought about it, miss. I suppose it would be nice, but I wouldn't want to stay away for long. I've spent 20 years working on this garden. I know every flower and tree. What would happen to them if I weren't here?
Gillian realized that it would be unkind to make him leave the hospital. However, she found out that the next Saturday was his birthday. She arranged with the staff to give him a party. They wanted it to be a surprise, and Dr. Carmichael agreed to let him go out for the afternoon. There was a flower show in the village. Morris left at 2 o'clock. He seemed quite excited. They expected him to return about 4 o'clock. The cook had made a birthday cake, and the staff had decorated the lounge. Gillian was standing in the window when she saw him. He was early. He was walking up the drive towards the house, whistling cheerfully. Behind him, above the trees, several thick black columns of smoke were beginning to rise slowly into the clear blue sky.